Auburn will now officially sport the swoosh and knows who it will play in the Players Era Festival over Thanksgiving in Las Vegas. Welcome into today's edition of the Barn Hoops Podcast. I am your host, Jacob Hillman, as July 4th is upcoming, and I hope everyone has a very enjoyable and safe 4th of July. But before we do that, we're going to talk about some of the news that has dropped as of late, the expected news of Auburn's relationship with Nike beginning on July 1st. The Tigers will sport Nike for the first time this upcoming athletic season. We've already seen some of the uniforms be released by Auburn Athletics, and some of the tees is for the Nike release, and it's very exciting if you're an Auburn fan. It's something that's been anticipated since the announcement about 15 months ago when that video was released of athletic director John Cohen texting Bo Jackson, Charles Barkley, and Tim Cook, and now it's a reality. Now it's finally here, and Auburn is officially a Nike school, and join some of the most pristine and powerful athletics programs in the world. Obviously, some of the most powerful athletic leagues in the world as well. You know, I think this is the big thing about joining Nike is you're now joining a big pool, but it is the best product and line in the world. It uniforms the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and so on. That it just makes sense for a program like Auburn to join Nike. And that's not to mention Charles Barkley as it relates to Auburn basketball. And then you move on to Bo Jackson and Tim Cook, and all three of those Auburn legends' relationships with Nike. And the fact that over the last 40 years or however long it's been for Charles and Bo specifically, and Tim Cook since he's been on the board of Nike in 2005, they have not been able to sport Auburn the way an Auburn graduate should be able to because of their deals and their signings with Nike. And now they will be able to as Nike ambassadors. And again, this is just a big deal for Auburn basketball in the sense that now Charles Barkley will be able to really show his pride. Not that it's ever stopped him before, but now he can really be involved, especially when it comes to showing his pride. And you know, this is a move for the student athletes, and that's what John Cohen said when this announcement was made back in 2024, was that this was for the betterment of the student athletes. And when they polled and got a bunch of feedback from student athletes, that's men's basketball players, women's basketball, football, baseball, softball, you name it, the overwhelming reaction was Nike is what they want to wear, and that's what they want to sport and be in whenever they compete for Auburn athletics. And that is now a reality. And obviously there's not a ton of details about this signing. It's a deal that was negotiated through Tigers Unlimited. So that's a private deal. It's not something that will ever be released. It's not open to open records. So I think that's very interesting. And I think that it really helped Auburn get the best deal it possibly could. And again, going back to just those three alumni, you know, Charles Barkley, Bo Jackson, and Tim Cook, you really couldn't ask for three better ambassadors that Auburn has for the program and for this sponsorship and relationship, with Tim Cook being the longest tenured board member for Nike, dating back to 2005. And obviously Charles Barkley and Bo Jackson being the historic athletes that they are and what they've done for Auburn and for Nike in their careers. And, you know, it's interesting because, again, relating this back to basketball and the last several years, it's something that you go back to the previous head coach that said Auburn couldn't win wearing Under Armour. And obviously head coach Bruce Pearl has proven otherwise over the last half decade or so, going to 2 Final Fours, winning 4 or 5 SEC championships, and really just turning into one of the best programs in the SEC, right there with the likes of a blue blood like Kentucky and the others that have really stepped up their game in the last 5 or so years since Auburn made that first Final Four in 2019. They're right there with Florida, who just won the national championship, as well as Tennessee and Alabama, who have had a lot of success since 2019. And again, this isn't going to have necessarily the impact on the field that, or on the court that, you might think, and that some might think, but I think it is a big deal just for these athletes, just again to be a part of the most powerful sports brand in the world, because it's as simple as that. That's what it is. Again, outfitting all the professional, or most of the professional sports franchises in the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball, as well as some of the most powerful athletes in the world. There's that guy, Michael Jordan, who, has a similar stature, or an even greater stature, really, than guys like Bo Jackson and Charles Barkley with his relationship. So it's just something that, obviously, Under Armour was a great partner for Auburn over the last 20 almost years, but it just did not have the steam going that Nike has had for 50 years now, obviously. And, like I said, Under Armour was great to Auburn. Auburn was great to Under Armour, but it was time to move on. And now it is a Nike school, and will join some of the best programs in the nation in wearing the swoosh. And it'll do that throughout the year. I think it opens up some opportunities. The Phil Knight Invitational, for example, that's a tournament that hasn't been played since 2022, but I do think, being with those schools, it helps with the perception of a tournament organizer or anything else, where it's like, oh, well, this is a Nike school as well. It doesn't, that stuff kind of matters behind the scenes, believe it or not. But I don't think Under Armour held Auburn back in that sense, but it was certainly something that could get you over the edge for opportunities moving forward. And that leads to our conversation about the Players Era Festival, which we learned yesterday that Auburn will face Oregon and Michigan in Las Vegas on Thanksgiving break, the multi-team event that Auburn will play in. The Players Era Festival is kind of a new deal. It was his first season last year, its first year playing last year, where it's giving out NIL money. It's a $20 million prize pool for the student athletes that compete in it. Every school is going to get $1 million, and then the champion will also earn $1 million to give to its roster. That's obviously what matters nowadays in college athletics. How can you generate revenue? And, well, basketball thought this is a great way to do it. Have a multi-team event over Thanksgiving where teams come and compete for the cash. And that's what is so cool about this event. And it's a stacked event as well. Auburn will play 3 games in Las Vegas for this week. And you notice I only said 2 teams. That's because it's an interesting system where the championship will be between, obviously, chances are it'll be 2-0 teams. There's probably going to be more than 2-0 teams. So how is that decided? The teams that make the championship, well, it's going to be points differential, then points scored, and points allowed are going to be the tiebreakers for that. So it really does matter how you perform in these games. You want to go out and win and win by a fair amount. That's going to be important if any of these teams want to make the championship, or even the third place or consolation game that will take place on Wednesday. So Auburn against Oregon will take place on Monday, November 24th at 7 o'clock Central. Auburn and Michigan, the rematch of the Sweet 16 last year, will take place on Tuesday, November 25th at 7:30 Central. Not sure exactly which arena is going to be played in. Both of these, or all of these matches, will be held at the MGM Grand Garden Arena and Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas. Just not sure which one Auburn will play its games in for those first 2 days of the tournament. And looking at the rest of the schedule, I think it's very interesting. And also with the format, there's a chance that you get an SEC versus SEC matchup, and even an Iron Bowl matchup leading up to the football game on Saturday, as Alabama and Tennessee are both in the field. Tennessee will face Rutgers on Monday, lead off the Players Era Festival at noon Central. Alabama will face Gonzaga on Monday at 8:30 Central. And then on Tuesday, Tennessee will round out its pool play against Houston. That's an Elite 8 rematch from last year. That'll be at 5 o'clock Central. And then Alabama will cap off the second day of the tournament against UNLV at 11 o'clock Central in Las Vegas. So overall, this is a huge tournament. Number one, these rankings are based off CBS Sports rankings, and just reading the schedule from Matt Norlander's article. as he had the first report after Michigan accidentally leaked it. But number 1, St. John's, number 2, Houston, Michigan's probably going to be a top 10 team. There are a lot of highly ranked teams in the field here. It is not going to be a given that Auburn makes the championship, as it kind of has in several of its previous multi-team events over Thanksgiving. The Maui Invitational was obviously a big deal last year, taking down a top 5 Iowa State and then taking down a blue blood in North Carolina and then a Memphis team that's always dangerous. And then the year before that, I think was Cancun. And it's just really a big deal for this team to be able to face some tough competition in this format. Obviously, the schedule is as tough as it ever has. As Auburn will face Houston and Birmingham, Purdue in Indianapolis, as well as NC State and Neville Arena, Arizona and Tucson. But in this format where you're facing teams back to back to back, I think that really tests the team the best way possible. So let's talk about these opponents that Auburn is going to face. First off, Oregon, who went 25-10 last year, was knocked out in the round of 32 by Arizona, but won this tournament last year, was the inaugural Players Era Festival champions, losing some key pieces in TJ Bamba, who was kind of the key contributor for the Ducks last year, averaging 10.5 points per game. Keyshawn Barthelemy, he also averaged 10 points per game. He is gone, as well as Brandon Angel, one of the leading front court players for the Ducks, who averaged 8.3 points per game and 3.8 rebounds per game. So Oregon is going to be leaning on Jackson Shelstead, who was the leading scorer for the Ducks with 13.7 points per game last year. And it hasn't really seen the influx of newcomers that maybe it would have seen, but TK Simpkins from Elon, I think he's the key guy to watch early in the season for Oregon as he joins after being named to the first All-CAA team for Elon last year. He averaged 16.4 points per game, so he's going to kind of fill that scoring role that Bamba leaves, as well as kind of a distributor, as Bamba averaged 3 assists per game last year, and Simpkins can kind of do the same thing as he averaged 2.5 assists per game. Also, the Power 5 transfers that Oregon gained from this offseason. Sean Stewart from Ohio State. He is a rim protector, led Ohio State in blocks last year, and Auburn saw him in Holiday Hoopsgiving last year in Atlanta. And then Devin Pryor from Texas. He played limited for the Longhorns, only 12.1 minutes per game, but he was a contributor, and he's going to contribute for Oregon this upcoming year. So Oregon's going to be motivated to try and defend its title at the Players Era Festival and go and win that $1 million again. And I think that's something that's potentially not, it shouldn't get lost, but it might amongst fans, is that this is a tournament where teams are playing for cold, hard cash. That is an amazing thing in today's day and age. And it's really a unique thing for college athletics. And obviously it rewards the team that wins. And I think that's what makes it so much fun. And these teams are going to be playing like it's the NCAA tournament to win that $1 million. So moving on to Michigan, a rematch of the Sweet 16 last year. Wolverines were 27-10 and won the Big Ten tournament championship. Those guys that you saw for the Wolverines last year, similar to Auburn, this game is going to be completely different. Both these rosters have to be completely revamped. Michigan with a couple more returnees than Auburn, but no Danny Wolf, no Trey Donaldson, and no Vlad Golden for the Wolverines. Those were the 3 best players for Michigan last year. But coming back for Michigan, Amari Burnett, he started in 37 games for the Wolverines, so all 37 of those games, Burnett, he started, and he was one of the best offensive threats for them. He's a former Alabama player as well. And then it's Roddy Gale Jr. He had 26 points in the Wolverines win over Texas A&M in the round of 32 of the NCAA tournament. He's going to be one of the key returnees for Michigan. He was inconsistent at times throughout the regular season, but really turned it on in the postseason until falling to Auburn in Atlanta. Now, the key addition for Michigan is the UAB transfer, Yaxel Lindenborg. And this is a guy that Auburn went after across the offseason. When he entered the NBA draft process, Auburn backed off a little bit, and then he ultimately committed to Michigan and withdrew his name from the NBA draft. But Lindenborg was the American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year last year after averaging 17.7 points per game, 11.4 rebounds per game, and listen, he can pass the ball to 5.2 assists per game. This is a guy that is going to test Keyshawn Murphy as well as Filip Jovic early on in the season. That is a matchup that I am looking forward to, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, especially for the front court for Auburn to really test itself and see where it's at early in the season. You got the Houston game in Birmingham early on, but again, you got 2 back-to-back games. Oregon will be a tough test as well, but then Michigan is really the tough one with Yaxel being the opponent for those big men. And then it's Elliot Cadeau from UNC. He's going to have to be the guy at point guard for Michigan. The Wolverines are thin at the one position after Trey Donaldson's departure. Cadeau, he averaged 9.4 points per game and 6.2 assists per game for the Tar Heels before transferring out. So this is going to be a really fun tournament to watch. And again, there's 18 teams, and all 18 teams are playing 3 games. So we'll see exactly how it shakes out. It would be really insane if you got like an Auburn-Alabama matchup on that Wednesday night in Las Vegas just before the Iron Bowl here on the Plains for the football game happens on Saturday. We'll see how it all shakes out. Obviously, St. John's, Houston, teams like that, Iowa State, Gonzaga, Tennessee, Kansas, so many good teams are in this field that it's impossible to even predict how it could shake out and whatnot. Another interesting factoid, Texas A&M was initially in the field, but then with Buzz Williams leaving, he goes to Maryland and puts the Terrapins right here in the mix with the Players Era Festival. So it's crazy how all of this shakes out, but Players Era Festival is something that Auburn's going to be in for the next 3 seasons. It's not just this 1-year deal. It'll play in it in 2026 as well as 2027. And then who knows what multi-team events look like over Thanksgiving break in college basketball. Do they all look like this? Does the Players Era Festival expand beyond this year? We'll have to wait and see. I think that this is kind of the model that a lot of multi-team events are going to have to go toward to try and attract top talent. Because if you look at the Maui Invitational, the Battle for Atlantis is what Auburn was initially going to play in this year. And I'll go ahead and look at the list of teams that are playing in it. It's not really a star-studded field in 2025. And it's really unfortunate because I think that these are some of the most exciting basketball games of the year. And it's kind of fallen off because it's a cost for these programs to have to go out to the Bahamas or go out to Maui to play in. But also when you have this incentive that the Players Era is offering, how do you pass up that opportunity if you're given it? So the field for the 2025 Battle for Atlantis, which Auburn was initially in before making the transition over to the Players Era Festival, this is what it currently is. Virginia Tech, St. Mary's, Vanderbilt, South Florida, VCU, Colorado State, Western Kentucky, and Wichita State. The premier team in that is probably St. Mary's. And that's a WCC team. You could argue Vanderbilt coming from the SEC, but Vanderbilt's not in that top tier of SEC teams like an Auburn or a Kentucky or Florida or Tennessee or Alabama. That's Vanderbilt. And then you could maybe argue Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech has not been great over the last few years. So that's kind of the route these are going. And to further prove the point, Maui Invitational isn't the best field that it's seen ever as well. USC, Texas, Arizona State, Chaminade is playing and competing in it. So that's really 7 high major programs. NC State's playing in that as well. Will Wade's first year, and Auburn will play NC State in Neville Arena 1 week after the Wolfpack wrap up in Maui and 1 week after Auburn wraps up in Las Vegas. So I'm really interested to see what direction these multi-team events go into. I would love to see Maui and Battle for Atlantis, offer a prize like the Players Era is, so that teams go back. And it was just an incredible run for Auburn and Maui last year, and I was fortunate enough to be there, and it's an incredible time. It's something that if Auburn's ever back, I'd recommend any fan fork out the money and go do if at all possible. It is a bucket list opportunity, and you absolutely should go do it. It was amazing, and I just think that these are opportunities that it's for the fans specifically. It's better than going out to Las Vegas, obviously. Everyone's been to Las Vegas, and it is what it is. But Maui, Atlantis, those are certain opportunities that I think are a lot more fun and better. Cancun as well, whatever it is, those opportunities and those experiences are a little bit better than going out to Las Vegas for a fan. But again, I do not blame these schools and these programs for jumping at the opportunity to go play for $1 million for players. That helps recruiting, and that helps these teams really hone in their skills early on, because again, they're going to play hard as hell in these games just to get to the championship and have a chance at winning the money. So I'm excited to see it. Again, Auburn faces Oregon. That first game on Monday, November 24th at 7 Central. The Ducks are the defending Players Era Festival champions. And then on Tuesday, November 25th at 7:30 Central, Auburn faces Michigan in a rematch of the Sweet 16 from last year, with everything to be determined on Wednesday. The championship would be at 8:30 Central on Wednesday, and the third place games at 6 Central. But obviously, you got to get there, and that's something that will be determined when the first two games are played, the first 2 days are completed. And again, I think it's very interesting that the tiebreakers are points differential, points scored, points allowed. So very different from any multi-team event that Auburn has ever competed in before, but it's still an exciting one that Auburn will be a part of this year, and something that the best programs in the nation are a part of. But again, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Barn Hoops podcast. Have a great 4th of July. Stay safe. Celebrate America's independence, however you may do it, and really enjoy it. We'll be back next week with some more off-season content, and maybe some more news will drop before then. Obviously, the Nike reveal continues on today on Auburn's social feeds. Be on the lookout for that. It's going to be awesome, and looking forward to the rollout of the merchandise on July 25th. So yeah, if you're looking for the Nike merchandise, July 25th is when that'll come out. It's just something. It's the way the calendar works for these brands and these companies. July 25th is the earliest that it would make sense to roll out the gear for the fans to go and purchase. So that's going to be a really exciting day as well. Looking forward to that. But again, I'm Jacob Hillman saying so long for the Barn Hoops podcast. Have a happy 4th of July and enjoy the long weekend.